All right, everybody, we are back here with the man himself, Aik, with a rare public appearance. Does not show himself very often, so everybody should be very privileged to see him here. So, how you been, Aik?
Pretty good, pretty good. You know, just sort of dealing with the situation like everybody else, but staying healthy and still working, so can't complain about that.
Good. It's good to be still working right now. So
yeah.
All right, so let's just jump right into it. I have a couple of questions here. The first thing I want to talk about, which is something that most people know you for being a designer and working on the game and stuff like that, and being a world champion. But do you have any, like, what was it like when you were a player? You know, like that era of the game. Do you have any fond memories as being a player? Is there anything memorable about that run to the world championship? Like, did you have a rival? Epic matches that stood out? Favorite deck that you played?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Dragon Ball is one of the earlier TCGs that I started playing. I mean, I played Magic a little bit, nothing competitor, anything like that, just with friends. DBZ was one of the first ones that I actually did any actual tournaments for, and you know, it was really fun being in the local environment, and then having the opportunity to go and play at a larger event. You know, Worlds, the first time I've been to Gen Con, that kind of thing. It sort of takes it to a whole new level, and I think a lot of people that have been to those types of events, you know, really enjoy that sort of the fun aspect and the camaraderie and all that kind of stuff.
Okay. Do you have a favorite deck that you liked playing at that time?
I mean, obviously I'm partial to Anger. I'm also a big fan of any Broly decks, but they weren't currently in the format.
Broly,
but yeah, I mean, those types of things, it's always great to just hang out with people and talk with people, especially in the early stages of the game when, you know, you're just reading about tournament reports and certain people and that kind of stuff, and you get to meet them at an event. And obviously, I talked a little bit with Brian Blanchard, and then obviously I played against him and Valdez and, you know, other people. So it was cool at the time to just play and enjoy the game on a different level.
Yeah, I know. Did you do a lot of regional, like, did you go out on the regional circuit at the time, or did you just like play I guess I remember correct, Florida was your local scene?
Yep.
Did you just do Florida and then boom, Milwaukee for Gen Con?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't really say there was a big regional circuit. I think it was just kind of nationals and then some other events that were going on at the time. The regionals kind of started for me the year after that. I played in Florida regionals, which was kind of my last sort of big event before working with the company.
Okay. So let's take that. So you are what I would consider the original prototype for what is the person who became the design department person that they looked at Score. The player of one of the games who did really well in the tournaments, very well spoken, very smart, very intelligent, moves in from there to a position at the company. What was that like? And then what was it that you did when you first came to Score? If I remember correctly, you didn't immediately start working on games and designs and stuff like that.
Right. So, I mean, you know, transitioning from a player to an actual employee at the company is kind of like a dream job for a lot of people. And, you know, I'm really lucky and thankful that I had that opportunity. And, you know, it was great to see that other players also got that opportunity later on. I mean, you know, Brian and you and everybody else.
Yeah. Say if it wasn't for what you and I'm assuming, like, what I would put, they hired you, they took a chance hiring a player, and it turned out to be a success. So that opened the door for people like Brian, myself, and, you know, the guys that followed after us too.
Yeah, and I mean, to be perfectly honest, like when I first started there, it definitely wasn't game design or anything like that. I was part of the playtest team. I was also part of, you know, like the marketing and CS team. I answered a whole ton of email questions for people on the rules and that kind of stuff, working with the judges and that kind of stuff before actually doing any type of design work.
Yeah, so we touched on this in another video interview I did, but we talked about, compared to the way it is done now, it seems quite archaic, the tournament results and how they were handled with the tons of manual entry. Did you have to do any of that?
Yeah, we did a little bit of that. It was a little difficult. back in the day, having to resort to pen and paper or anything like that just made it a mess. Obviously, tournament software was a little bit better, but it was still a little bit difficult for record keeping, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I know when you first started there, because this is the first interactions I can remember having with you as a player, where you judged when the regional circuit, like you were the guy that was sent out on the road to judge all that stuff. And a lot of people, from at least the later half of the game, that is where they remember you from, is the guy who judged everything. What was it like being out on the road like that all the time and interacting with everybody?
I think at that particular age for me, which is, like early 20s, I think being able to travel all those places and, visit all kinds of different things and see all kinds of different people, something I would wish for now, at least on the scale that it was back then. They're talking about maybe 20 events a year, but it was definitely a lot of fun, and the judging, it was okay. I think the judging part's a little tedious just because we tried to do everything in one day back then.
Wasn't it all done on hand, if I remember correctly? A lot of it was done by hand.
Yes, yeah, we had those event slips and all that stuff that we had to do. So that part was a little tedious, but I mean, it's always great to interact with people that are playing the game and sort of talk to them and sort of see what they like and don't like about the game or the latest set or anything like that.
So did you take, when you were out on the road, did you take feedback that you got about the game to the design staff, and did that have any effect on the future sets?
Yeah, and I mean, I think we took obviously we put a lot of weight on tournament results and certain decks and how they performed, not just out in the wild, but in our own internal play testing. But I think it's always, it was always in the back of our mind that, certain people like certain things, and maybe it was too strong, maybe it wasn't, but we would always, try to do our own research also.
Makes sense. So what else I got on here? So Z went to GT, as everybody knows. Kind of not a bit more. Well, what did you think of that transition? So I've that's come up a few times in some of these interviews I've done, and it seems very mixed people's opinions on that transition there. Like, did you like how it was handled? Do you wish it was handled better?
I think it could be handled better.
That's the
obviously,
opinion I have. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Z had significant interest still, even though GT was coming out. It kind of felt a little forced when we switched over, but I think we did kind of as best we could given the situation. But, obviously, coming from Z, I would have loved to see that still had a prominent, stance in the environment.
Yeah, I mean, to me personally, I would have just rolled it all over as Dragon Ball and just kept on going, but that wasn't the way the deal was set up then, so.
Yeah, we never really got to explore that part of it, which is a little disappointing.
Yeah, but no, it's just the way it was. So you, did you design any cards in Z at all, or was that
yeah? I mean,
a chippy thing?
Yeah, I mean, David did certainly the majority of it. We would just do, a handful of cards or one or two cards every once in a while, just when there was certain things that we liked or had ideas on. I didn't actually do my first set design until Lost Episodes for GT.
Lost Episodes. Okay, we'll get to that in a second, but did you ever, when you were working there as a playtester, did you ever have to deal with Jim Ward at all? Or was he already, like, that era of the game had already kind of moved on?
He was pretty much already moved on by the time I started. Now, I think I saw him at Gen Con that very first year and, just chatted with him there. But he wasn't at the company when I started.
Okay, because as the years went on past, the Jim Ward Dragon Ball sets and that kind of era have their own, like, mystique to them. And other than Chippy, I don't really know anybody else that ever interacted with the guy.
Right.
He's like knighted by the Queen, and he's Sir Jim Ward and all this stuff. And it's kind of mind-boggling now to think that guy worked on all this stuff, who helped create Dungeons and Dragons with Gary Gygax and sat at his table and stuff. So, I mean,
yeah, it's
pretty wild. Yeah. So I never got to interact with them other than twice. One time at Gamma, and then one time at a Gen Con when I went to one of his panels and just asked him a random question about Dragon Ball Z. And he was like, really? People paid attention to that? And I was like, yeah, it's still pretty popular, dude. So,
I mean, he has some iconic cards in those first couple of sets for sure. So
yeah, for sure, yeah. In today's memeable world, I just look at the Saiyan Saga as like that. Every card is a meme, pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's talk about GT, and that was the first set you got to design at Lost Episode. So what was that experience like? And then that set in itself has somewhat of a lasting legacy in today's world of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think being the first set, you're just kind of sort of wide-eyed to the whole process and everything, whether it's sitting down and screen capturing everything or cropping images or whatever, working on all the background documents, that kind of stuff. But it was exciting to be able to work on a set on my own and sort of see how it goes, see how it went. I mean, we were talking a little bit earlier. I'm very surprised at the values that are associated with that. And I think obviously the scarcity and rarity of it has a lot to do with that, but it's pretty cool that you can see them going for, certain values and there's certain interest out.
Yeah, there's cards, like anything from that set is kind of like the holy grail for the collector's world. The first edition limited foils of like any Goku from that set, the Trunks Saga level 5 or the Trunks level 5, they're all very sought after, high value cards in today's world. Did I lose you?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. We're having major internet problems here with Storm, everybody. So we're talking about GT Lost Episodes and how that is kind of one of the holy grails of not just the collectible card aspect of the Dragon Ball world, but like just Dragon Ball collectibles in general. There's people that collect Dragon Ball stuff, and the Lost Episode GT stuff is very sought after. And it's interesting that for the most part, from the player standpoint, like GT is just forgotten in time. Like people refer to it just as like the lost sets of the game. Like when we were doing the retro stuff, we didn't play with any of it. We didn't use any of the rule conversions. When the PanZ stuff rolled over, it was all pretty much, I don't think anything was taken from those rules changes into the new game. And I just find it super fitting that the last episode was called the Lost Episodes, and that very much became like what happened to that whole kind of era of that game. It just lost to time.
Yeah, and I mean, just talking about Lost Episodes too, I mean, those episodes themselves are just unique in the whole scheme of the whole series. I mean,
well, they weren't even aired in America.
Originally aired, yeah. So I mean, they're just kind of lost on their own. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just super interesting to me whenever I look at just how crazy people are for that set in particular. And a lot of the people who are chasing those cards are people who live in the markets where GT was popular, like South America and Australia in particular. GT was pretty successful from what I understand. And so they all love those GT cards. Yeah, but I can remember too, there was one group of players back in the day when we would do the retro stuff who loved the GT stuff, and they would play with the GT cards and just do like the GT standard focused stuff, and that was their little group of things that they loved about the game at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool that it kind of introduced some new people to it, sort of bring some new blood in and some new thought for that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. So we're going to go from the Lost Episodes here to another thing that is pretty much forgotten in time now, and that would be the ReZ era of the game. So that was all you. What do you remember about that experience? I can't. I remember it like it was Dragon Ball, so it seemed like it was doing well, but people were still comparing it to like what the old game did, and there wasn't two comparable markets at that time. Did you catch that?
Sorry. It kind of lagged.
Oh, sorry, the internet's too bad. So on ReZ, that was pretty much all you. What do you remember about that? Because I remember it seemed like it was doing well, like people were playing it at the tournaments and stuff. But I mean, I think people were still they had old Z in their mind at that time. So that since it wasn't old Z, they didn't look at it the same way.
Yeah, it was definitely, soon enough after the other stuff where it kind of lost a little bit of interest between players and distributors and that kind of stuff. But I mean, I thought it would be interesting to sort of bring some new mechanics in, just to sort of tie it a little bit closer to the show.
Yeah. So I can remember mechanically really liking ReZ. I thought it was mechanically super solid. Two mechanics in general that I really liked were refocusing and the way that the MP stack worked. I thought those were super representative of what they actually did in the show. Can you go into your thought process on that?
Yeah, it's not super complicated. I mean, I think just the concept of being able to defend attacks with your own attacks is it's just natural, right? I mean, anybody that's seen the show basically sees it happen every fight multiple times. It was a unique way just to sort of get multiple functionality out of the cards that you had in your deck. As far as the MP stack, I wasn't necessarily a big fan of having to draw allies and that kind of stuff from your deck. It's sort of the randomness of that. So I kind of wanted to, introduce a more static, consistent way to build your deck around multiple personalities. And, obviously in those fights, there's 2 or 3 of the weaker characters that always try to take on a big bad and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I remember like really liking that. And then I thought the like named attacks in that game were pretty representative of what they actually did in the show compared to like the first ScoreZ, where I mean going back to the Jim Ward set. So I don't even know how to explain some of those. What were the iconic attacks in the show, like powering? I don't know. Spirit of the Earth heals you.
Yeah, I mean, they just kind of got those images and those scenes just kind of got stuck on random cards. So I mean, I definitely felt that it was important to make those particular attacks important into the game. Yeah,
and then the game ReZ also had like a much different look to it than ScoreZ. Like it was much more indicative of where card games were at the time. Where the templates didn't change every set, and the foil patterns were reasonably basic compared to the stuff that ScoreZ, like the first batch of Z, was doing. But that was really where the market was at that time. People really, they didn't really want 16 different foil patterns of stuff and things like that.
Yeah, but I mean, to be perfectly honest, though, I liked a little bit of the design changes that happened through each set in DBZ. Although one thing that I liked on ReZ was just sort of how the attacks got laid out as far as damage and type and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so some of that formatting there, like it eventually a decade later carried over into what PanZ was.
Right.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So I know, like at one point, you and I had talked at a Comic-Con about PanZ, and it seems like the scope of what that conversation was to what it actually ended up being changed dramatically into like a full relaunch of the game. Can you go into a little bit of process, like what was the mindset about bringing the game back after basically a decade at that point?
Yeah, and I mean honestly, at the time, Carl Braun and I were the only ones that had carried over from original Score into Panini. And I had sort of transitioned to working on sports programs, and he was actually the one that came up with like the idea, like, hey, let's go get this license again. You know, there's still a lot of interest in it. Research, and it's like obviously reference all the retro stuff and all the events that were going on.
I had a correspondence with Carl at that time, and he would always ask, and he was always surprised. I'd be like, yeah, we had 100 people show up to play in a retro tournament and stuff, and we have this group of people, we have 2,000 fans in our group online and stuff, and he was always like, wow, that's crazy that people are so into that. So that makes sense. But I remember like we had talked about like just doing like an anniversary box or something, and then I was really surprised like a year later when it actually started going into production, it was going to be a full game. I was like, wow, that's quite. So I mean, I guess you asked distributors and they were like super into the idea of the game coming back, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a little bit of that, a little bit of, you know, player interest, a little bit of feedback from there, and then, you know, obviously just sort of the company mentality as far as doing a starter booster type product versus just a regular box set type product.
So was that the first like gaming product that Panini America did? Had they dabbled at all in the gaming industry up to that point?
So I guess Panini as a whole, they have been doing game cards, but I wouldn't say like trading card game like. They were just kind of light-ish, sort of war-ish type games with different sports cards and that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think DBZ would be the first real traditional trading card game that the company would have done.
And so it came out, it was pretty successful. I was surprised at how successful the game, like the hype behind that game when we were at that initial Comic-Con, and posted like just pictures on the retro blog and stuff. I mean, it crashed the entire website and everything. I was super surprised at how many, like just how, like there was a big fever around it. Were you surprised, and was Panini surprised as a whole about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the company itself was extremely surprised. I was certainly a little surprised, but given the popularity of the license, the original players that were still interested in it, and sort of the new generation of players that didn't have the opportunity to play the original game and were sort of getting into the property, I think that would have made it less of a surprise if we'd really considered all of the different pillars that were holding it up, building it up.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, so let's hark back to like the ReZ stuff. So a little bit of that ReZ stuff came into PanZ. Did you ever think about bringing maybe like refocusing or any of that stuff, or was the idea was to pretty much play on the nostalgia factor and just kind of modernize the game to be a more like the same look and feel, but just be a little bit more streamlined and modern with like the way the cards were laid out?
Yeah, I mean, I think we wanted to be as true as we could to the original, since obviously we leaned on a lot of original players just to sort of generate buzz and interest in their communities and that kind of stuff. But obviously a refocusing type of mechanic or sort of card effect or mastery, that definitely would have been an option as we got further along.
Yeah, because I thought like the introduction of the critical hit system was pretty, I mean, that was a pretty interesting way of streamlining some of the kind of like weird archaic rules of the old game. Like the Dragon Ball capture rules in the old game are really weird. And
yeah,
I don't know if you remember like the particular allies, if they did one life card of damage to steal stuff.
Right.
There's just a bunch of really weird things in the old game, and I just felt like the critical hit system was a way to fix a lot of those issues.
Yeah, it definitely streamlined a lot of that stuff, and I mean the people that we had working on it back then were really creative about introducing those types of things and that kind of stuff, just the whole playtest group and everything.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive that almost all that was done remotely too, which compared to score days, everything was done in-house. And I guess that's kind of the standard now, is a lot of that stuff is all done remotely. The other projects I've worked on since then, they've all been remote. So
yeah, I mean, we've definitely come a long way since then.
And then given the current situation of the world, I think that's kind of the way that things are going to be for a while. So.
Well, nobody would have thought we were here however many years ago in this particular situation.
Yeah. So, do you keep up with any of the current stuff? Because like, PanZ has an enduring legacy of people that still love it and still are out there rocking it hard. Do you keep up with any of that stuff? Do you ever kind of like dabble, look and see what they're doing? Because they're doing some real interesting things with like the groundwork that everybody put in place originally with some of their virtual cards and things like that.
Yeah, I pop in. I sort of stay a little bit up to date as far as new cards and sort of the discussions and that kind of stuff. But I haven't actually been able to sit down and mess around with decks or anything like that on my own. But I do sort of keep up as much as I can. Yeah.
Would you ever consider going to play, like Gen Con or something, if we ever get back to a point where we can do things like that in the world?
I thought about it. I've been offered, decks to use and that kind of stuff. I just kind of I just enjoy watching people play. I think that's part of having designed any game or any part of any game. It's always just fun to watch people play it.
Yeah, I feel you on that. Yeah. So it's just interesting how it isn't going on. I mean, PanZ really benefited too when it was the timing. There was a lot of perfect storm going on there. The right amount of nostalgia, and then a new show coming out. I think Dragon Ball is as popular now, if not even more popular on a world level than it even was back in like the big ScoreZ heyday.
For sure. It's incredible how they've sort of continued to just build on it. It's crazy. And obviously, I wish we were still making the game right now. That's just unfortunate as far as licensing goes. But
that's just the way it is. Have you looked at the new game at all? Have you looked at what they've done with the property?
I've looked at a little bit. I can't say I've delved into it too much. I'm always jealous about the art that they have available to them.
Yeah, it's super pretty game, and it plays like very much typical game of what they're going for, which is not really my thing. Like I played it for 3 sets, and
right.
It feels a little bit too much like Yu-Gi-Oh for my taste.
Sure.
Plus, still have the nostalgia, kind of the old, almost more like turn-based, grindy elements that the original variations of the game had. But damn, man, those cards, they look. I'm with you, man. I was super envious. Like, would have loved to have been able to work with any of that stuff, man.
Yeah.
It always drives me nuts because I look at the front of one of those cards and I'm like, this Vegeta whatever thing looks amazing, and I flip it over and that card back they have is just like,
yeah.
I don't know about this one. I guess it works. It's a card back, but not what I was going with.
We'll take the fronts though.
All right. So, since you're here, is there anything else you would like to talk about? I know some of the other people, they kind of they talked about their time at Score as a whole and what it is that they remember about it, and kind of a lot of people brought up that that kind of like 2003 to 2008 era of time there really informed a lot of decisions, and people learned a lot and stuff like that. I know you basically transitioned, pretty much the only person that transitioned through, but is there something from like that time frame that you really look back on and like, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I was there for all that stuff.
I think the overall experience is it's just unforgettable. I mean, the people that we had working there, it was really like, just like a little family. Mm-hmm. I mean, we would not just work, but I mean, we would hang out, we would play games, we would play other games, we'd go to events, that kind of stuff. I mean, it's hard to replace that kind of thing. It's always good to just have a group that you can do whatever with, whenever you want.
Yeah, the traveling was something that everybody seemed to love a lot, getting to go to that early era. Like, especially when you look at what Comic-Con is now compared to what Comic-Con was back then, I look back at that time and I cherish that time a lot too.
Yeah, I mean, I think all those interactions at conventions, whether you're playing at one or whether you're judging one or whatever else, I mean, I just think being able to hang around people that have the same type of, interests and same type of thought process as you it's always memorable. It's always cool to do. It's why I love going back to Gen Con every year and Comic Con every year, just to see people that I've met before and then new people that are enjoying stuff now. I mean,
yep,
it's awesome.
Yep. So do you think you'd ever come back out on the con circuit as a fan? I don't know if you really, would you be interested in going out and dabbling as a fan?
I've considered it. Yeah, I mean, I think
not necessarily playing Dragon Ball or stuff, but just coming to Gen Con to hang out and see the old crew and
sure. While I do think that they will probably send me every year for work purposes, I would definitely love to be able to go on my own, just sort of do whatever, chat with people, test out new games, go to panels, that kind of stuff. I mean, I think you lose out on a lot of that by having to work, 8 or 10 hours a day or whatever. But at least with Gen Con, you're not sleeping very much. Just spend 4 or 5 hours after the show, play some board games with people and hang out.
Yeah, 'cause I remember, like, at least for me, the transition from going from like having to work all those things to like the first Comic Con I got to go to and be like, I'm just going to go to panels all day. Like, wow, this changes your perspective on it a lot.
Yeah, it's definitely different. And I mean, when you're working there, you just really enjoy being able to walk around for a couple of hours or whatever and just sort of actually experience it. So
yeah.
I would definitely like to go as a fan to any of those places.
Awesome. I'm assuming you're still a fan of Dragon Ball. Did you keep up with Super and watch all of it?
I tried my best. I won't say that I watched all of it, but I definitely I watched some of it, certain parts of it for sure.
Okay, because it kind of lagged a little bit, but man, that last tournament arc, they were hitting on all cylinders. Did you watch the Broly movie?
I haven't, which is sort of blasphemous. I understand that's probably a fireable offense.
He actually has a personality, a backstory, and character development now.
I understand. I will say the same thing that I've been saying about the new Ava movies. I'll probably wait until the end because I'm sure he's going to be in more stuff. So I'll probably wait till the end and try to catch all of them like in a row.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know you're a big Ava fan. Do you keep up with any other anime, or is it still just like Dragon Ball and Ava?
I try to watch some of the more popular stuff. Obviously, I've watched Bleach to the end, but I'm actually really excited. Obviously, that they're going to redo that last, or will actually do the last arc for it.
Oh, that's right. There is new Bleach coming out. Yeah.
Yeah. At some point they'll come out.
Yeah.
What about Attack? But yeah, I mean, I try to watch.
Do you stay up on that one?
What's that?
Attack on Titan. Do you stay up on that one?
I tried, and to be honest, I read but I read a lot of that before watching it, and I enjoyed it for the most part. It kind of got a little bit interesting, but I try to keep up with that. I watch a little bit, obviously, of My Hero and One Punch Man, that kind of stuff. But
I'm assuming, yeah, you need to keep up with it. You gotta keep your eye out for stuff.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Well, cool. I don't want to keep you. I'm sure you've got a lot of stuff going on. You've been playing a lot of video games still, or no? The Dark Lords of Camelot, or whatever it was today.
I haven't actually found an MMO that I would really sink my teeth into right now. I was playing League a lot for a while there. I haven't played it very much lately, but I still watch LCS and that kind of stuff, and LCK. Yeah, I pay attention to that part of the esports part of it.
Get into that Final Fantasy MMO that everybody seems to love?
I didn't. I did for a little bit, but not a lot.
I hear that's the spot to be these days. It's in that Final Fantasy MMO. That's where all my friends are. No.
I believe it. I mean, that's another one of those properties that you just grow up with and you kind of follow it forever, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for coming on here. This is actually like a leftover thing for something I'd planned to do 2 years ago for the 10-year anniversary of Retro, but at that point work was really slammed, and given a COVID crisis and everything else, have time to work on projects like this. And we teamed up with Aaron and his guys over at Hunter Burton for a really good cause. So hopefully everybody will jump on board with all that stuff. So do you have any closing comments here before we sign off?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a couple. I mean, obviously, I'm thankful to everybody that played the game, supported the game, any version of it. You know, obviously, without such a rabid fan base, you know, we wouldn't be able to do what we were able to do. I also think, as far as, you know, Hunter Burton and suicide awareness and everything, I think that's a great cause. Obviously, one of my best friends took his own life, and, you know, that was difficult at the time, and it's still difficult now, but obviously anything that we can do to affect, you know, positive change and make people more aware of what's going on, then I think that's awesome. That's amazing. So, yeah. I mean, I'm super happy to be part of this, and I'm glad that you had me on.
Yeah, I'm super glad you came on. I was kind of surprised you wanted to get on, because you're not normally very public. You keep everything real tight to the vest and stuff. So I'm really appreciative that you decided to come on here. Appreciate it a lot, man.
Yeah, that was my pleasure. It was a lot of fun.
All right, man. So on that note, we're gonna head off, and you be safe out there, man.
Thanks. Take care, guys.